him. Hi everybody, I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films and, that was just a Castle film, Eugene Castle, a part of the Sports Parade series, where there's a bunch of people fishing outside, freshwater fishing. So, right off the bat, I'm going to break tradition, and we're going to show a 35mm film. Behind me, we set up 35 reel. It's got some issues, and what these are snipes. Snipes are what the industry called the little things that they would show in theaters, the advertising that wasn't like a feature trailer. So a snipe would be for visit our snack bar, or visit our fine local beauty salon, or visit blah 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 blah, or come back for Wednesdays. Wednesdays are special times at the theater. So those are snipes, and so this is a collection of snipes that I got from Memphis, and basically I got a whole giant box of them, and most of them were really beat up. Were basically very shrunk because they were rolled like this, and so when they begin to shrink, then you pull them out and they just kind of fall apart and break, or they can never lie flat. So this is a variety of different things, and what you're going to notice is, as I previewed this a little bit, is they're all over the place. So some of them are spliced upside down, some of them are flipped, some of them will be off because you have 4 different perfs where 16 has 1, and so when the machine is scanning, it's just going based on the perfs, and something might be spliced 1 off. So bear with me. I mean, it's going to be a bumpy ride, but it'll be fascinating nonetheless. So here are some 35mm snipes. Enjoy.
إذا عاوزنا بنروي نفس نشاش قسكاميو عاشيرو يبزاري نوش ناكن يلا تسرح نتسري على ذو
Capital Dry Cleaners serving Niceville since 1930. Their cash and carry service
Clothes clean and fresh. Shirts beautifully laundered. There's a Capital Cleaner near you. You'll look better and feel confident in clothes cleaned by Capital Cleaners. Capital Dry Cleaners serving Niceville since 1930. Their cash and carry service provides you with an economical way to keep your clothes clean and fresh. Shirts beautifully laundered. There's a Capital Cleaner near you. You'll look better and feel confident in clothes cleaned by Capital Cleaners. Smith Brothers Car Wash. All materials used in cleaning your car retain the original beauty of finish. Liquid wax in final rinse, so not only is your car cleaned, it's also waxed. You must buy gas, so why not buy from us and drive a clean car for pennies? Smith Brothers Car Wash. All materials used in cleaning your car retain the original beauty of finish. Liquid wax in final rinse, so not only is your car cleaned, it's also waxed. You must buy gas, so why not buy from us and drive a clean car for pennies?
Oriden näsnä vesirottaa annas mielenne. So happy boy, and didn't but that, didn't but it, and didn't but never, but it was it, and didn't but that, so happy boy.
For fun time or party time, visit Baskin-Robbins, the ice cream store with 31 flavors. Kids, register for your free ice cream cone on your birthday. And Mom, if you're planning a birthday party, why not plan it around our party desserts? After the show or anytime, look for the sign at the Big 31, Baskin-Robbins Ice Cream, just east of this theater in Parkway Village Shopping Center.
Nog scherp snel weer. Ja, fikker mixet, de zip staan ooit in de zaal. Je mocht ze dus doen als skets, de schillengroof.
Heel bekast met versen, heel net met uw skets de weer wel de heel. Zelf running at Sozum Alps at that's on the women, and the shed of the waters, it's now Kim. Ja, turf for the rest, who's that you're still get chestnut, you know, gets of almost rung his ass to bed. It's yeah, the gleaming the door will for Milfning, you guess me, they need mixed on with snow. For prompt, efficient television service, call Balt's Television Service, specializing in repairing hi-fi radios, transistors, televisions, both black and white and color. Larry Baltz says better quality means greater value. So, folks, for guaranteed expert service, next time, call Baltz TV.
Ja, wie nou sneller, nog scherp snel weer. Ja, fikker mixet, de zip staan ooit in de zaal. Je mocht ze dus doen als skets, de schillengroof.
Heel bekast met versen, heel net met uw skets the weer wel de heel. Zelf running at Sozum Alps at that's on the women, and the shed of the waters, it's now Kim. Ja, turf for the rest, who's that you're still get chestnut, you know, gets of almost rung his ass to bed. It's yeah, the gleaming the door will for Milfning, you guess me, they need mixed on with snow. Skating is fun for everyone, yes, young or old, for your health stick, roller skate, and roller Saturday from 6:45 to 9:45 p.m. at Nashville's only twin roller rinks. And don't forget, one is always available for private parties. Phone Chapel 25407.
Universe nu dus niet meer. Snap, sneer op skid, helemaal zo maar niet. Nou van dat nu nou, gauw hier.
First National Bank of Commerce presents...
This was a wonderful car in its day. How's it holding up today? You might try this way to travel, but just 1 horsepower. Hardly. Don't just toy with the idea of buying a new car. We'll help you finance it if you need us. That's what banks are for.
The First National Bank of Commerce is your friendly, complete banking center with 2 locations to serve you. Our staff is qualified to assist you with any banking service, a checking or savings account, a low-cost auto and home improvement loan at First National Bank of Commerce, Paragould.
Treat yourself and your friends at the Barbecue. Steaks, a full-course dinner, or a snack at any time. Genuine Pit Barbecue is a specialty of the house. Be sure to try the strawberry pie served all year round. Enjoy the air-conditioned dining room. Or let the Barbecue serve you in your car. Look for the Barbecue sign at 432 Murfreesboro Road.
Flipped so that the audio head is not reading the optical soundtrack. Experiment. Basically, I was trying to capture while we were watching this, but the file is so big, it's like a giant 4K file, that it actually crapped out and went slow. So we're not capturing now, but I'm going to run it in reverse and flip it so that you can see the other ones. And yeah, so here we go. Let's this one will still be flipped and you won't be able to hear it, but enjoy.
zipper mutir so then I see you about but the color you know we will see you about but the oh morning out in the shit in the crate the ocean and I really all will see off there about to out the ocean so I had the little ships to do it about if no we I think that I can't sell and it's all golf as gets it was about but that's not for the past 6 years.
Ugar, Sir Macba, Gabon Shan, Sir, that, no, Nabur Memo, no, and up, Sakola. No, I can give you a song, you guys, that, version you can't be in it, the wish sister was now, but I'll say that, Sir. We versus in the shape of Louis, the word, as you can't be if my kill never roses, Sir, Macba, Gabon Shan, Surfing.
Oh, person out looks up. City nu till snän out with my hoop. Här kunde jag bredda I the well, such noise. Elder. Så no, such the. Vad var det då said there, tell me. Yeah, this man all the block. Yeah, it's never all cool, but no, was so said.
Snazir, Sir Macba, Gabon Shan, Sir.
Re-elect Leonard Donovan, State Representative, experienced, honest, and interested in serving you.
That's all for all now first no that's no see talked about bro all of us the laws in all microphone smearolo no still not of tend may now feel now feel to get more feel has to the number X and grill Mars the Lord that it's a locus fire your floor or nice say now we're better off now sing it. What's the most convenient, time-saving, and flavorful word in a meal today? Steak. The appetizing aroma of a steak broiling, the taste-tingling treat as you savor the first bite. Make Mine Steak is heard all over the nation and never with more satisfying results than in our place. We have a way with steaks. We treat them tenderly and serve them at
There's a problem. I'm going to try to work on here. Basically, I don't know if you can see it. If I move it, maybe you can see it. But you see how that really warped film just basically unwarped it just basically, this is what we call making pottery because it looks like a pottery bowl. Anyways, yeah, we're going to have to do a little bit of prep work there. Obviously, that was, when that was spliced, it was somebody who didn't have a way to see what the frames were and how things were lined up, so it was all over the place. So, let's go back to 16 and watch Body's Defense Against Disease, featuring our good friend. Enjoy.
The social and economic tragedies resulting from infectious disease are appalling. Not only does the care of the sick cost millions, but time lost from employment adds tremendously to this waste. Of even more importance is the unhappiness and suffering of those afflicted. War banners, which may be observed on every hand, are constant reminders of the serious efforts being made in the fight against disease. Ultimate victory in this fight requires continued study both of the organisms causing disease and of the complicated interplay of defensive mechanisms that operate within the body. The skin, an armor-like coating, is an important part of the first line of defense. Here the structure of the skin is indicated. At the surface is a hard layer of compact cells constantly replaced by cells growing outward from this region. As long as this protective coat remains uninjured, bacteria cannot easily break through. This primary line of defense continues as a sticky mucous membrane which lines the walls of breathing channels and digestive passages. A greatly enlarged cross-section of this membrane in the nose shows the blanket of sticky mucus propelled along by the cilia. Here we see a small object actually being carried along by this ciliary action in the mucous membrane of a frog. In a similar way, as long as this blanket remains intact, most bacteria which invade the nose strike it and stick to its surface. This mucus coat-bearing bacteria travels from end to end of the nasal passage about every 10 minutes and is usually swallowed. In the stomach, the mucous membrane still acts as a barrier against the bacteria. Furthermore, the stomach lining secretes gastric juice, which tends to destroy them. By the time the food mixture passes from the stomach, few living bacteria remain. The mucous lining continues through the intestines. Injury to this delicate membrane may result in local inflammation, and in the region of the appendix may cause appendicitis. This appendix is normal. This cross-section shows the normal condition of the mucous membrane. But in this appendix, part of the membrane is destroyed and bacteria are growing into its wall. And here is shown the extremely serious condition of a ruptured appendix. This occurred when inflammation failed to overcome the bacteria and they spread into the peritoneal cavity, causing peritonitis. Whenever and wherever the body's first line of defense is broken, bacteria may enter. Inflammation is the protective and defensive mechanism that immediately starts to operate. Poisons from nearby bacteria affect capillary walls so that white blood cells called leukocytes, normally circulating in the blood, tend to stick to them and then begin to squeeze through the walls and move toward the bacteria. The microscope shows us how one of these cells engulfs foreign particles. It is called a phagocytic or devouring cell. Within a few hours, a wall of these phagocytic cells, aided by similar cells already in the tissue, are enclosing the bacteria. Meanwhile, blood fluids have leaked through the capillary wall, and they support the walling off action by forming thread-like nets of fibrin. Eventually, the whole interior softens, resulting in a pus-filled abscess. Here are shown the beginnings of an elaborate second line of defense, the lymphatic system. Bacteria from this wound enter these lymphatic channels and are carried in the lymph through larger channels to filtering bodies called lymph nodes. Within the nodes are maze-like passages lined with devouring or phagocytic cells, past which the bacteria must go. These cells engulf the bacteria so that they thus tend to become concentrated within the node and are eventually destroyed. This secondary line of defense is well distributed throughout the body. Here are groups of lymph nodes in the neck, and here in the thorax, and here in the abdomen. Closely associated with this secondary line of defense is the third line, the blood circulatory system, including the heart, the liver, and spleen. If bacteria penetrate the first and second lines of defense, they enter the bloodstream. The walls of this normal vessel prevent the bacteria from passing readily from the blood to the body tissues. They are thus kept in the course of the stream. Since the cells of vessel walls are only slightly phagocytic, little happens to these bacteria immediately. In this diagram, let us follow a small group of bacteria coursing through the bloodstream. They pass along the vein to and through the heart, and then through the arterial blood to the body as a whole. Eventually, most of them reach the liver and spleen. In these organs, the blood flows more slowly. Here we see bacteria running the gauntlet of devouring cells which line these passages. Because of this ability of the liver and spleen to remove bacteria from the blood, these two organs are called the primary blood filters. During all these processes, the body tissues have been stimulated to produce invisible chemical substances called antibodies. These antibodies enhance the capacity of the body to resist further attacks by bacteria of the same kind. One typical antibody action is shown here. In this single typhoid bacterium, we see that the antibody and modify its surface, causing it to become sticky. Here we see typhoid bacilli moving about freely. Note how they rebound when they strike each other. This is because they have identical electrical charges which mutually repel. We shall introduce a drop of serum which contains antibodies to the typhoid bacilli. Now note how these bacteria have collided and stuck together, gradually building up large clumps. As a result of this clumping, it is likely that more will be engulfed when phagocytosis occurs. As we see here, a clump of several bacteria is being engulfed at a single contact. And here, a mass of bacteria engulfed and being digested. Another type of antibody action, such as with these cholera germs, is shown here. Serum containing these antibodies starts a dissolving process on the germs so that they begin to disintegrate and disappear within a short time. The defense value of these types of antibody action lies first in checking their drift from the point of infection to other parts of the body, and second, in directly destroying them. Without such antibody action, bacteria may spread through tissues, enter the bloodstream, and cause serious disease or even death. Thus, we have seen the body's three defenses. First, the skin and the mucous membrane, which make difficult the entry of bacteria to the body. Second, the lymphatic system with its node filters. And third, the bloodstream with its primary filters, the liver and spleen. We have witnessed the destruction of bacteria by special cells whose action is made more effective by antibodies. In some cases, this antibody production can be induced artificially by the use of vaccines. Also, serums containing the antibodies themselves may be introduced. Most of these treatments have been developed since 1890. Such accomplishments give evidence of the progress which science is making in its unending fight to overcome these microscopic but deadly enemies of the human race.
James Brill, who was giving us an alternative pronunciation for membranes, which he called membrans. We'll add this to the list of protean, abdomen, vegetable, reptiles, puma, rutabaga, Montana, Gemini, robots, and ethanol. Were there other ones that I left off the list? Let me know. Let's see. What do we got next? So I've been trying to, you see I put a split reel here because basically what happened was I was trying to easily get it from not falling off the reel, and it fell off the reel. And then I had to go and I had to rewind it, and it was a lot. It was a lot of work. So, yes. Let's learn about metals and nonmetals, or metals and nonmetals. Enjoy.
In our physical world, there are metals, such as those in steel, and nonmetals, such as sulfur. Sulfur, carbon, oxygen, silicon, phosphorus, and iodine are among the 22 elements usually classed as nonmetals. Other elements, including sodium, silver, magnesium, aluminum, tin, and copper, are among those that make up the remainder of the elements, 81 in number, that are usually classed as metals. To see how metals are different from nonmetals, let's first compare the atomic structure of two metals, sodium and magnesium. In the outer shell of a sodium atom, there is one electron. This electron, like the others in the inner shells, is held in the atom by the positive charge of the protons in the nucleus. In a magnesium atom, there is one more electron in the outer shell and a greater positive charge in the nucleus. This holds the electrons closer than in a sodium atom, making the magnesium atom the smaller of the two, and making the force that holds its outer electrons greater than the force in a sodium atom. We think of this force in terms of the energy required to overcome it in order to pull a single electron from an atom. This energy is called the ionization energy or potential. The ionization energy determines the tendency of an atom to lose electrons. In the periodic table, elements are arranged generally according to the number of outer electrons in their atoms. Each vertical column is called a group, each horizontal row a period. As we move to the right along the periods of the table, ionization energy tends to increase. In helium and the other rare gases, ionization energy is at a maximum for each of the periods. A kind of division among each of the periods of the table occurs along this line. Here, ionization energy has become high enough that atoms no longer tend to lose electrons. Instead, they tend to gain electrons. This is the key difference between metals and nonmetals. Metals tend to lose electrons, whereas nonmetals tend to gain or share electrons. The elements lying along the line of separation between the metals and nonmetals are sometimes called the metalloids. Under different circumstances, they may either gain or lose electrons. Remember that this grouping, based on ionization energy, depends on the number of electrons in an atom's outer shell. Ionization energy is also affected by the number of energy levels occupied by electrons in an atom. Each energy level, or shell, screens out some of the attractive force between the nucleus and the outer electrons. The more shells an atom has, the weaker is the force that binds the outer electrons. As we move down the periodic table, each period of elements has one more shell than the previous one. Elements to the lower left have the most shells and least number of outer electrons, so they are the most metallic. Those in the upper right have the least number of shells and greatest number of outer electrons, so they are the most nonmetallic. Now, remembering that metals tend to lose electrons and nonmetals tend to gain or share them, we can go on to explain the physical and chemical differences between metals and nonmetals. One physical property we can notice in the aluminum panels on this building is that they have a luster or shine to them. Metallic luster is a physical property of all metals. Nonmetals, like sulfur, do not have a metallic luster. Metals usually have high melting points. Aluminum, for example, melts at about 660 degrees centigrade, whereas sulfur melts at approximately 120 degrees centigrade. Because metals like aluminum are malleable, they can be rolled out into flat sheets or paper-thin foils. Like steel, metals can be hammered into different shapes without breaking. Sulfur, like other nonmetals, will break or crumble when it is pressed or hammered. Nonmetals are generally not malleable. Metals are ductile. They can be drawn into wires of varying diameter without breaking. In wires, we often put to use another physical property of metals, high conductivity. Metals are good conductors of both electricity and heat. Although this aluminum frying pan is hot, the non-metallic plastic handle is quite cool. Nonmetals are poor conductors of both heat and electricity. Metals, like the metal that makes up this steel cable, generally resist forces that tend to pull them apart. Metals have high tensile strength. Another physical property of metals is high density. This steel beam is quite heavy, as compared with this wooden board of about the same size. Differences in density and other physical differences between nonmetals and metals can be explained in terms of bonding, whether atoms tend to lose, gain, or share electrons. Atoms of nonmetals, like sulfur, cannot lose electrons to each other, but they do form molecules with covalent bonds. 8 sulfur atoms make up the sulfur molecule, in which outer electrons are shared between adjacent atoms, giving each one an outer shell of 8 electrons. Because the bonds extend in fixed directions only, there is a good deal of empty space between the molecules in a nonmetal, just as there is between boards that have been joined in an open pattern. But there is little space between the boards when they are stacked. This is essentially what happens in the case of metals. Take aluminum, for example. Because metals tend to give up electrons, their atoms do not bond together to form molecules. Instead, the metallic bond occurs in most metals. In this metallic bond, atoms are packed tightly together, each one adjacent to the maximum number of neighboring atoms. A single atom can have 3 atoms beneath it, 6 on the same level, and 3 above it. This illustrates one type of closest packing and causes the high density of metals as well as other physical properties. Because metals tend to lose electrons, the outer electrons move freely among the atoms, causing each of the atoms to become positively charged ions. Attraction between the positive ions and what is sometimes called the sea of electrons accounts for the high tensile strength of most metals. This sea of electrons is responsible for the high heat and electrical conductivity of metals. Closest packing also explains the high ductility and malleability of metals, which can be demonstrated with close-packed aluminum discs. Because all the ions are held together by the sea of electrons, under pressure, they can be made to slip past each other rather easily, and the metal will still hold together as long as the distance between ions is not increased too much. Here is a photograph of the arrangement of atoms in platinum, magnified more than 1.5 million times, in which a close packing arrangement is suggested. This close packing results from the tendency of metals to lose electrons. Whether the atoms of an element tend to lose or gain electrons affects not only its physical properties, but also its chemical properties. For example, the metal sodium will combine violently with chlorine, a nonmetal. In the reaction, sodium chloride is formed. In general, metals react readily with nonmetals because metals tend to lose electrons and nonmetals tend to gain or share them, usually forming ionic bonds. Electrons are usually not transferred in reactions between nonmetals such as sulfur and oxygen. In the burning of sulfur, sulfur dioxide, a covalent compound, is formed. Nonmetals tend to form covalent bonds, and the sulfur dioxide results from a sharing of electrons. Although nonmetals frequently react with each other, metals seldom react with each other. Liquefied lead and tin, for example, can be mixed, and no chemical reaction will take place. Let's allow this mixture of metals to cool. This cooled material is the familiar solder, not a compound, but an alloy, a solid solution of one metal in one or more other metals. Alloys form because the closely packed ions of a metal have mobility when the metal is liquefied, allowing ions of other liquefied metals to mix freely with them. This forms a solution of ions held together in a metallic bond by a sea of electrons. When the solution hardens, an alloy is formed, a result of one of the properties of metals that make them different from nonmetals. Metals and nonmetals differ in that metals tend to lose electrons, whereas nonmetals tend to gain or share electrons. This one difference helps to explain the physical and chemical properties of nearly all metals and nonmetals, the elements that make up all the materials of our physical world.
Every day on the highways of America, automobile accidents claim more and more lives, casualties, sacrificed to violence. To the victims who survive, the legacy is often serious injury that requires long and complex treatment. An hour ago, this man was Richard Wells, able-bodied worker, USA. A man with a future. Now, that future's changed.
This is ready. Fresh night. Elevator.
Hotel. How's the breathing?
Little blue.
Seems there. That's sailing. More sponges.
That's it. Permanently disabled. Richard Wells is one in a million, more than a million civilians, disabled so badly that they need special help before they can work and earn a living. Daily, their number grows. The reason? Accidents of all kinds. Illness, of eyesight, paralysis. Mental or emotional sickness. No matter what the cause, the problem is the same. To bring the disabled to the fullest possible usefulness. In the state and local vocational rehabilitation offices, thousands of men and women are beginning the road to recovery. Applicants go to the nearest office in person if they are able. If not, the office goes to them. After a complete physical examination, which is provided in every case, the applicant is interviewed by experienced counselors. And here the terms change. The applicant becomes a client with a new friend whose entire resources will be at her disposal. Here, in a private conference, a plan for rehabilitation is worked out. In the cases of clients like Sally Myers, who are emotionally upset, the counselor will try to recognize and appreciate her mental illness. When needed, psychiatric treatment is provided. Each situation requires a different solution. The counselor discovered that when Frank lost his right arm, he became almost helpless. A left arm that he didn't know how to use. A lost job. This means a special program. Occupational therapy, job training, a new arm. The next time Frank comes in, he'll be ready for the first step of his program. Aptitude tests enable the counselor to unearth hidden talents that may indicate the most desirable job training. What about Frank? He's good at figures. You don't force a square peg into a round hole. These tests help to make sure of that. This first an employment test may provide a sound basis for Sally's job training program. But of the 250,000 handicapped on the rolls of the state vocational rehabilitation agencies this year, thousands are so disabled that they're unable to visit the local office. So to their homes and to the hospitals go counselors to develop a definite rehabilitation plan. Orthopedic involvements constitute 50% of all the cases that achieve rehabilitation through the state agencies. To Dick Wells, this visit means a new lease on life. The impetus that will start him on a long uphill fight with a definite goal to fight for. Physical therapy is one of the fundamental steps in the program. Exercise strengthens muscles, prepares paralytics to support themselves on crutches or braces. In preparing a patient for artificial limbs, many doctors prescribe hydrotherapy, massage, exercise. Before Dick Wells can be outfitted with new legs, doctors must be certain that his remaining muscles are strong enough to use them. To paralytics, the long, arduous trail back begins on a simple practice device. This restores a lot more than mobility. It restores the outlook. Despair moves over to make room for hope and confidence. Getting ready for that return engagement. Every possible device must be made available to help mend Richard's body and strengthen his will to fight. Oftentimes, ultraviolet ray is used to provide energy-giving vitamins that will step up the recovery process. Many and varied are the kinds of prosthetic limbs that may be obtained for amputees. Manufacturers sell more than 30,000 artificial limbs to new customers each year. To make certain that in each case the most appropriate type of prosthesis is prescribed, state rehabilitation divisions obtain the services of leading specialists who approve the restoration. A cosmetic hand is one that resembles the real thing, and that's what Frank needs. His job doesn't require a working appliance. But Dick Wells must walk. Someday he wants to move again, to get out and go. And his job ambitions, his hopes for the future, demand that he have appliances that will match those ambitions and hopes. In cases where functional employment of the hand is part of the overall program, The client must have an appliance that provides a maximum of utility, something he can use on the job. But whatever the appliance, fitting is only the beginning. The person must now be trained to use it. Dick Wells finds that it takes long, discouraging weeks of practice before he can walk by himself. Most amputees can learn to walk with a natural gait. But Dick's high double amputation makes any walking an achievement of courage. To the nurses and attendants whose lot it is to mingle with the brave, this period is one of patience, providing encouragement, and a time when the client must dedicate all his strength of will to mastering this strangeness that has become a part of his new life. Occupational therapy begins with fundamentals. What might be elementary to some people is important to Frank because he's learning to write all over again. It's fun when you're in the second grade. When you're a man, it's tough and you sweat it out. In thousands of schools, workshops, institutions, and factories, handicapped people are learning new skills like drawing and designing that will enable them to compete on the same level with unimpaired workers on the same job. Among the many workshops that cooperate with the rehabilitation program, it was easy to find one where Dick Wells could learn how to run a milling machine, prepare himself for that factory job. Many handicapped people discover that they can type and do secretarial work just as fast as the unimpaired. In cases like Frank's, clients are often provided academic training without cost to themselves, but everything must point toward attainment of the right job objective. For the hard of hearing, aids are provided as part of the restoration program. Extensive research and scientific studies are used as the basis for selecting the right job training. Paralytics and some spastics learn profitable occupations like lens grinding. New hopes rise as the disabled see their disabilities fade and their abilities grow. In cases of emotional maladjustment like Sally Myers, skilled and sympathetic treatment by qualified psychiatrists can do much to inspire new self-confidence, hasten the recovery process. The homebound paralytic can also work. There are hundreds of jobs that can be done at home. It's the state officer's job to visit the home, find the job, give the necessary training, then to follow through with encouragement, advice, and assistance. No rehabilitation process is more complex than that which deals with the blind. To Bill Holmes, who lost his sight at middle age, it means beginning all over again, learning reference points and spacing, learning to recognize objects, to orient himself, to travel. Rehabilitation for the blind is a tedious process that requires expert supervision. Instructors often accompany the client for an extended period of time, indoors and out, so that the rehabilitation may be continuous and progressive. In publicly and privately sponsored workshops in the United States, thousands of blind trainees are at work, producing everything from toys to electric switchboards. An ever-growing social consciousness of the problem of blind workers has impelled states and communities to step up this program, to analyze more and more commercial job opportunities for the blind. And in the sanatoria of America, tuberculous patients prepare for the time when they will be discharged and claim their new freedom. To these people, vocational rehabilitation must bring job training geared to the physical condition of the client. Physical disability is no index of real ability. The ranks of the famed are filled with those who overcame severe physical handicaps to attain success. Can it be done? Check with Tommy Muriello, who carried his disability into the ring against the greatest fighters of his time. Or inquire of Bill Stern, an amputee,
The Brooklyn Dodgers
whose
beat the
disability
Chicago Cubs
faded in a
3-2
voice
in
that's
extra
known in
innings.
every
On 61
home in the
the
land.
first home run of the year. Higbee was the winning pitcher. Faroe the loser.
Asked James Froman, who emerged from a battered airplane in Lisbon Bay to give the world a lesson in courage.
Sparkling burgundy blue, and I find the very mention of you like the kicker in a julep or two.
Or ask Al Capp, an amputee, creator of Lil Abner and a score of other characters familiar to any American. All these and thousands of other handicapped people have reached the top of their profession. In the American community, the dream of greatness is the right of all. For the disabled, this greatness is realized in a job. Independence, becoming a definite part of the community's production dynamic. In the highly skilled jobs that go into its precision manufacturing, the Western Electric Company long ago discovered that a wealth of productive manpower is abundantly available in handicapped people. In its huge Hawthorne plant at Chicago, the blind, on detailed, intricate jobs such as assembling terminal strips, have established outstanding records for speed and efficiency. Helpless? They're not helpless. They're creating. They're building. They're working. At Hawthorne, all jobs are graded according to their required skill and responsibility. Fred Scott has moved up through 3 grades with corresponding pay raises in the past 2 years. Bill Jones has been with Western Electric for 19 years, 4 of them with that artificial hand. If you check over in the inspection department, you'll find that Chet's record is one of the best in the business. And Chet has only one good arm. Whether it's spot welding or arc welding, Sam does a mighty good job. All of these people work with a genuine conviction that they are part of the family, contributing to the operation of a great industry. And they are. The Bulliver Watch Company, long famed for its consideration of the human factor in industry, has conducted extensive experiments with handicapped workers. And today, next to its plant on Long Island, Bulliver operates a special training school with one single objective: to train physically disabled people to assume jobs in a specific industry. Bulliver officials declare that the highly specialized, intricate work of watch craftsmanship, handicapped workers have established a record of job performance that has challenged. One of Bulliver's ace foremen is an amputee. He attained his big promotion after he acquired his handicap. Further evidence that what is left is what counts. Along the assembly lines of America's factories are countless numbers of handicapped men and women, working side by side with unimpaired workers. turning out the same kind of production. Time was when a deaf mute was considered a burden for society to shoulder. Now the deaf mute shoulders his own burden. At Bolivar, many people born with this affliction are making their way on regular jobs, earning regular pay. Before Ruth was stricken with infantile paralysis, she ran a switchboard. Still does. The only difference people notice is in her voice. There's a little more triumph in it these days. Known the country over for its community-minded employment policies, the Caterpillar Tractor Company in Peoria, Illinois, has discovered that production schedules are met just as fast or faster by their physically disabled employees. This man can operate a gas pump. That's proved. It's in the records. And in the right job, all handicapped employees will give full value for wages received, with no special conditions created for their employment. People who can neither hear nor talk overcome this impairment and put their remaining capacities to work on important jobs. Jobs like this one at Caterpillar, blueprints and a design for doing. The blind can see through their hands. A great law of compensation sometimes speeds the recovery process. When a man loses one faculty, he often improves immeasurably his remaining faculties. This is true of the paralytic. If he is trained for a job where he can exploit his talents, he can be just as successful as any other worker. And it's certainly true of the amputee, who makes one arm do the work of two. The commercial greatness of America can be measured by the wealth of productive manpower that has made this majesty possible. And of all the great industrial forces in our country, none is so extensive as the automobile industry. At the Ford Motor Company in Detroit, Michigan, a good part of the manpower is vested in disabled people. Ford has found that absenteeism is not as great among handicapped workers. They spend more time on the job. Here at the Ford River Rouge plant, the blind person performs jobs vital to meeting automotive schedules. And with the proper appliance, the amputee is ready to go. At the Ford plant, men with no hands at all are able to work, to collect an honest, well-earned paycheck every week. These testimonials by Bolivar, by Ford, by Caterpillar and Western Electric are supported by other great names in American industry. Why? Because people like Dick Wells discover talents and abilities that can be developed into a productive job for their employers and independence for themselves. Because handicapped workers like Sally Myers can increase their earnings an average of from $300 to $1,600 a year. Because the tuberculous find that in this land of a second chance, there are rehabilitation services that prepare them for jobs. Because Bill Holmes, an executive at his Braille typewriter, turns a talent once lodged in him useless into profit for his employer and himself. And a little girl bound to a home by paralysis finds that a telephone, a typewriter, some good guidance and training means that she too can share in the program. Working in close cooperation with public employment officers, rehabilitation agencies prepared and placed on jobs 43,000 people like Frank in 1 year. Besides Frank, there are more than 1.5 million men and women of working age who are prevented from securing jobs because of their disability. These people are always urged to go not to the employers, but to the nearest rehabilitation office. The average case cost of complete rehabilitation is $300. This is a non-recurring cost to the taxpayer. It changes the handicapped person like Dick Wells from a dependent into a producer. Instead of requiring money for his support, he's contributing to the nation's wealth on a productive job. These people, the state and federal governments, have dedicated the services of a comprehensive organization. The objective of the state-federal system of vocational rehabilitation is to assure Dick Wells and every handicapped person the right to another chance. To start him off, to see him through, and to make sure that regardless of the degree of his disablement, he will be provided every facility his country, his state, his community, and American industry can give him to help him make his comeback.
I wasn't able to introduce that film, but it was obviously about vocational rehabilitation. Anyways, I'm on a conference call, so I have to go. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please hit the like button if you liked what we did. I was not able to get the reel to get tension again. There's been lots of problems, but yeah, please hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe. You can also go to avgeeks.com and see other things that we've put online, and we have a 24/7 channel there. You can go to patreon.com/avgeeks and donate. You can also buy us coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks. I hope everybody has a great Friday and weekend, and we'll be back on Monday. So everybody take care.